Today on the podcast, I'm going to talk about choosing your administrative role wisely and why this is so important in terms of preserving your capacity for writing. So, now I'm going to have to be careful here because I could easily stay on this episode for 2 hours. I'm going to boil this down to the big three things I'm going to discuss here around admin. So much to say, so little time. So let's talk about admin and the point of it. Okay, so let's get this out of our system. We all have to do admin. As professors, it's super galling. This is not why you got a PhD. I know it. You know it. You got a PhD to do your teaching and to do your research. But the running of a institution requires some admin. And yes, there are 1,000,001 administrators in your university. And of course, they themselves proliferate the admin because that is their job. That is what they are there for. Why this is a problem for us is because they can't do anything until academics do things. And that's why universities are such a mess, because they're full of administrators whose job it is to administrate and therefore create administration. But they can't actually do anything until the academic has done something, which in turn creates massive amounts of administration for academics. Okay, now I've got that off my chest. Regardless of that, we all need to do admin. And what I mean here by admin is a collegiate, non-teaching, non-research related role. So a role that isn't about standing in the classroom and isn't about sitting at your desk writing books. We all have to do that. It's part of being collegiate. It's part of being in a team. It's part of working for an organization. We must all take our turn. We must all play our role. Even when we're interested in it or when we're not interested in it, this is irrelevant. We all have to take a turn. Now, my overarching point as your coach is to say it's not your turn all the time, and you shouldn't be performing multiple roles. There is enough staff to perform the roles that are really required. I know some places invent admin roles just so everybody has an admin role. This is not good. But it's not always your turn to take on every single thing all of the time. So if you're one of these people and you're like, I have no time to write, that's why. And I think you know that. I don't really need to say that out loud. So yes, we all need to be collegiate. We all need to do some admin. All right. Now we have accepted that. I want to talk about choosing admin wisely, because not all admin is created equal in terms of its burdens. Now, I have to keep this reasonably generic because, of course, every department and every university and every global jurisdiction operates slightly differently, and they have slightly different roles and they have slightly different structures. So I'm going to keep this quite generic, but I can be confident enough that you'll have something that is similar to the kinds of roles that I'm talking about, I think, here. So here's the 3 pitfalls in choosing admin. So these are the things you shouldn't do. Okay, number 1, a role that is too big for your seniority. And I want to specifically talk here to junior colleagues and colleagues on the tenure track that feel beholden to the institution. They feel beholden to saying yes to everything they're asked to do. In case if I say no, then I won't get tenure. If I say no, I don't really know what the UK equivalent of that is. If you're on a permanent contract, there are no consequences to saying no. But anyway, I digress. You might be offered, and I'm using that phrase on purpose, you might be offered an administrative role that is too big for your level of seniority. So what do I mean by that? There are certain roles within an institution, in a department, that require seniority, that require a great deal of experience to do. So, unfortunately, it doesn't mean that you won't be asked to do them. What I'm getting at here is you cannot rely on the hierarchy to be judicious when they are handing out roles. They're not going to go, oh, I'm not going to give that to Sarah because Sarah's only been in the job 3 minutes. She's too junior to do that. They're not going to do that. They're like, I have an admin role. Somebody has to do it. Sarah's got nothing going on. Let's give it to Sarah. That's how workload is. Nobody is thinking, that's not a good fit for their career stage. No one is thinking that. You have to be the one who thinks that. So I've come to my attention, especially in the last 5 years or so, that more and more mid-ranking academics are being asked to take on administrative portfolios that are way beyond their paycheck. And why does this matter? Apart from the fact that you're not getting paid enough money to step into these roles, you don't have the relevant seniority to herd cats into position. Academics are notoriously difficult to manage, and a junior lecturer cannot manage a professor into doing something. That is just never going to work. Academia is terribly hierarchical, no matter what we say. So you have to have a level of seniority to be able to herd the cats, and you also need the relevant level of experience. And by that, what I mean is, when you are new as an academic, the amount of time you are learning how to do the job, because there's no training, as I've already covered. So the amount of time it will take you to perform a task is not the same as a professor who has been doing that task for 20 years. Professors will mark papers, grade papers, a lot more quickly than you will. They will fill out forms. They will negotiate meetings. They will have much greater command over their time because they are much more experienced in the job than you are. Therefore, they have more time to devote to administration. You, as a junior person, are like drowning. You're drowning in just getting through the day, getting your teaching prepared, turning up to class, delivering it, dealing with all the noise, answering your emails, and trying to squeeze in your research. That is a full-time occupation for you. It is not a full-time occupation when you become more senior because you have become more skilled at those jobs. And so you take less time to execute them. Therefore, you have more capacity for admin. You have more capacity for roles that suck up a lot of time. That is what I mean by this role is too senior for your job title and level of experience. You're not getting paid to do it. You don't have the hierarchical heft, and you just literally don't have the time available in the calendar to do it. I have seen people take on administrative roles that were too big for their seniority, and every time, without exception, it ends in tears, their tears, and sometimes the department's tears, right? It doesn't end well. It doesn't mean you're not going to be asked, but you need to be judicious. Am I really at this level that I can take that on? And that's not, and you see, immediately, if you're a certain kind of person, you might internalize that as some kind of failure. Why can't I do it? Because you just haven't been around long enough yet. That's why. And I am protecting you from your own worst instincts to take on more and more and more work here. So do not take on an admin role that is higher than your paycheck, that is higher than your level of experience and seniority. And this is especially catastrophic when people take on roles like head of school or department or however you call it for your little disciplinary center, head of that, catastrophic. Director of research, director of undergraduate studies, or head of teaching and learning, however you want to call those particular portfolios. It's catastrophic when people without enough experience and paycheck take on those roles. Catastrophic for them and their careers, catastrophic for everybody else. And that's not the way to make friends in your department, trust me. So don't take on admin portfolios when you're not paid enough or don't have the experience enough to take them on. Second, choose the admin role wisely. And when I'm saying that, what I mean is think about your personality traits. So many times, I have seen colleagues take on admin roles that they are not suited to on a personal level, but they are super interested in, and this is where I like cringe. My cringy internal self goes, it's not about what you're interested in, and it's not even really about what you're good at. It's what suits you best. So if you remember that episode I did on time and stress management, if you choose an admin role that your personality is not suited to, regardless of whether you're interested in it, regardless of whether you're good at it, you are going to find yourself increasingly stressed out and then ultimately burned out. It is never teaching or research that burns academics out. It is admin. And there's a whole boatload of reasons why that is that I'm not going to get into in this episode. When you look at the conditions for burnout, you see the characteristics for admin roles map on perfectly to those conditions. So admin is something we need to think carefully about. It's not an afterthought, because when you choose your admin, you are choosing how much time and capacity you have for the rest of the year to do your writing. So please don't choose something that you are interested in or you think you're going to be good at. I want you to think about yourself. Know yourself, your personality. What's the kind of person that I am? What in Melanie's list of stresses, what is the one that pings my button? So if you remember back to that episode, I talked about too many tasks. That was the stress, right? Not enough time, too many tasks. Second one, expectation stress. I have to do something to a high quality. I'm not sure I can do it. Third, risk or uncertainty. I don't know the four corners of this role. I don't know what's involved. I am uncertain about what's expected. This is stressing me out. 4, toxic people. And then 5, I put one in, the lack of agency or autonomy about how and when work is executed. Now that is 5 in particular is very important to me. So when I was choosing admin roles, I chose roles that were sensitive to my stressor. And my stressor was autonomy of how and when I'm going to execute the work. And therefore, I chose roles where I had the most agency and autonomy over that admin role. It wasn't the least amount of work associated with an admin position. It was the most amount of autonomy and agency. So let's think about the kind of person you are and what it is that stresses you out. For example, if you are stressed out by not being able to take a decision. So let's say you have students before you and you have an admin role that is about dealing with students' circumstances. And you do not have the power to make a decision for or against that student. You can't do anything to help them. It has to be run up through a chain of command. And there are 4 chains of command above you, and those people don't respond to you. You are going to feel terrible because you feel very bad for the student and you care very much about it, and you're frustrated that you cannot do anything or get an answer for that student because you have to wait for the chain of command to operate. And let's be honest, it might never operate. And you don't like being put in that position. Don't choose a role where you have no decision-making capacity and you're in a role where there is multiple layers through the university that you have to run everything by, because that is going to drive you mad. That's going to drive you mad. So don't pick something that is a stressor for your personality. That's my second piece of advice with admin. My third piece of advice is think about who you're working with. Is this a solo endeavor, this admin role, or is this a team? I've written here as in my notes, is there too much Brenda? Now, I think you've become acquainted with Brenda by now because I mention Brenda a lot. Brenda is my archetypal person I don't want to be around at work. So I don't want to be in an admin team with Brenda. So if it's a role that has 2 or 3 people in it, and Brenda's one of those people, I don't want to do that role. And it's not about how much work there is or anything like that. I'll take on more work. Less Brenda, more work. So that's also something to consider. Is this a solo endeavor? And many admin roles are. They aren't necessarily team roles. They're solo roles. So think about that. So the types of admin roles I did, for example, my last admin role was chair of the examination board, the postgraduate examination board. Now, there's also chair of the undergraduate examination boards. These are very different roles. The undergraduate examination board deals with a cohort of 2,100 students. That's a lot of students. And also there's a lot of stress. So that's a lot of grading. That's a lot of opportunity for things to go wrong. It's quite stressful to get all of those grades together by the board date, so on and so forth, blah, 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 blah. But it only meets once a year. Oh, sorry, twice a year. So once for the main board, once for the resit. But the main board is once a year. Now, and that has to be a team because there's just a lot going on. Whereas the postgraduate board, postgraduate cohort, 400 students, maybe 200, meets 4 times a year because of the nature of the program. So it looks like more work, but it's actually a lot less stress. And it's a solo endeavor. It's me and then some administrators. So I know exactly when that role is taking place because the board dates are set in advance by the university. I know exactly what I need to do. It's very contained. Yes, there's decision making. Yes, everything rests on me. There is responsibility. There's lots of things that I have to do, external examiners, one thing and the other. But ultimately, that is a very solo endeavor. And it's very regimented, and I have a lot of agency over how I'm going to perform that role. And crucially for me, no meetings besides the actual board meetings and the prep meetings. I wasn't in a meeting with 4 different levels of the university every time, something happened. That to me was a significant consideration in choosing that role. Whereas if you are, for example, in a UK university and you are director of research, you are going to be caught in the ref bubble. So you will have a discipline, a school, a department, a faculty, and a university level. So 6 levels of people you got to deal with, and meeting on meeting on meeting on meeting on meeting, and papers, and it's never ending storm of trouble. You need to be quite senior to be doing that job. So nobody under a professor should be doing that job. So I want you to think about when you are choosing admin, you are choosing how much stress you are introducing into your job and how much capacity you're going to have left over to do your writing practice. The last thing I want to say about this is have a think about the kind of roles you are consistently choosing and what that says to the higher ups about the kind of person that you are in terms of your career and your career progression and the reputation that you're establishing within that department. Let me give you a concrete example. If you are somebody who takes consistently pastoral roles, so the emphasis is on caring for the undergraduate body, it is quite likely you are going to be perceived as somebody who is not interested in research and not a researcher. That's not right, but that is the CV that you are building. Remember, every admin role you take is a line on your CV. So what do you want that CV to look like? What kind of trajectory are you building for yourself? And this is especially important if you are wanting to be taken seriously as a researcher, but also if you do want to progress on the administrative path, you better take administrative roles that build leadership in them. And not all administrative roles do that. So there's a whole reason, there's a whole matrix of reasons why you have to choose your admin roles carefully in terms of promotion criteria, reputation. But the ones I wanted to think about today was the ones that are too big for your seniority, they will just kill your career. 2, too much of a stressor for your personality. And 3, too much Brenda. So beware of who you are working with. The cardinal rule is not to take things on that you think are interesting or fun, but that you are most suited to in the way that you work so that you can still preserve capacity for your writing.